This week was an eventful one. Announcements of Left 4 Dead DLC and new Battlefield games were just the tip of the iceberg this week in gaming. Battlefield Heroes is a free-to-play shooter spin-off from DICE's massively popular multiplayer game, Battlefield. And it has just been discovered that EA plans to have the game out before the end of this fiscal year, which ends March 31st. It appears that, providing there isn't another delay, we'll be getting our hands on this cartoony shooter sooner than we thought. In other Battlefield news, EA has announced two new Battlefield games, Battlefield 1943 and the sequel to last year's entry in the series, Battlefield Bad Company 2. Bad Company 2 is a direct sequel to the original, and it will feature more vehicles, more destruction, and more team play. 1943 is a reimagining of Battlefield 1942 as it features remakes of the map Guadalcanal, Wake Island, and Iwo Jima. Capcom has announced that the new Bionic Commando revisit will be releasing May, with the PC version to follow a few months later. The game is not quite a remake, but a continuation of the classic platformer, featuring shooting, swinging, and object flinging, all thanks to the game's main mechanic, the bionic arm. Valve is notorious for excellent downloadable content, and keeping with the tradition, they've announced a new expansion for their zombie shooter, Left 4 Dead, which watchers of my show will remember got a perfect score. The DLC will include a new multiplayer game mode called Survival, 2 new campaigns, and the ability to edit maps on the PC version. If tradition is anything to go by, this expansion may well come to gamers free of charge. Michigan will be the home of a new game studio opened by publisher of the PC RTS game Sins of a Solar Empire. All we know about the studio right now is that it's got around 50 people working in it, and it might be working on an unannounced RPG. And finally, we have a release window for Prototype. Activision has recently sent out invitations to the next Comic-Con containing the following statement. Quote, gamers will get their first chance to play the highly anticipated open-world / action-thrilled Prototype planned for release this June. I figured I'd go over 3 of the better games of last year. Keep in mind, all these games are going to be getting the same score, so without further ado, here it is, my year-end review. The premise of all racing games is to drive fast. Any racing game you play, you'll be driving fast. I would hate to imagine a game that made you drive slow. That would suck. The Burnout series has always had fast cars, and faster than anything else. Almost on the border of too fast. But there's no doubt that the sense of speed is generally better in Burnout than in any other series. I loved Burnout 3. Burnout Revenge was fun, if not a bit too arcadey, with the checking traffic, and Burnout Paradise takes the series in another direction completely, with an open-world racing game. Open worlds are a tricky thing to pull off. You can't just build a city that looks like any city. In a racing game, grids are boring. Paradise City is probably one of the most poorly designed cities ever, from a city planner point of view, that is. From a racing game point of view, it's excellent. There's always a shortcut or an alternate route to take to get to your destination. Unfortunately, you'll find yourself pausing the game to pull up your map more often than you'd like due to the inherent confusion of the world. There's no events that are boxed off, meaning that you can take any route you want from the start to the finish. You can try following the other cars for the fastest route, but that means that you're following them, not in front of them. This game is, after all, about racing. Almost a year after it's released, Burnout Paradise's graphics still hold up very well. The environments can be a bit bright at times, but for the most part it's quite pretty. The masterfully done blur effects add to the sense of speed quite nicely, and the reflections and active damage modeling do nothing if not draw you into the experience. The sound effects are on par with your typical crashing and boosting sounds. Unfortunately, there's nary an explosion throughout the entire game. and the voice of DJ Atomica, who is basically your tour guide, is very annoying. At least you can turn him off. Like I said, this game is all about speed and crashing. The cars handle very nicely, and it's easy to control your cars to do things like air tricks, drifts, and traffic weaving. This is good because if the controls had been the slightest bit off, the sense of speed would have been the death of the game. There's so much to do in the city. There's one event for every single intersection in the city. You can hop into the new crash mode at any time. It's admittedly not as fun as the old crash mode, but it can still provide a bit of fun when you're feeling like wreaking havoc. The single play is really fun, but if you don't have an online connection, you're missing out on a load of good times. This game probably has one of the best online components I've ever seen in a racing game. For one, to go online, you never even have to stop moving. Just bring up the mini menu with the D-pad and select online. A quick flash and voila, you're in. Your car doesn't even change position in the city. Not only that, but while free driving around, there are a number of challenges that are constantly active. You can try to get the best power parking, go the farthest distance while driving in oncoming traffic, do the most barrel rolls, and even see how many degrees you can spin in the air. It all works perfectly and makes for an amazingly fun time. And what would this review be without talking about the DLC, or downloadable content? Criterion is one of the nicest developers I've ever seen. In less than a year, they have added so much to the game. They gave us a day and night cycle, they gave us bikes and new cars, they even fixed an early problem with the game by adding a restart button that took away the need to travel all the way across the city to restart an event. And the best part? Burnout players didn't have to pay a cent.